This is wrestling's greatest moments.
Hey now, wrestling fans. It's time for another episode of Wrestling's Greatest Moments. Now, with a career spanning 6 decades, Jerry the King Lawler has feuded with a who's who of wrestlers. Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at the many feuds of Jerry Lawler Part 1. Now, before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Jackie Fargo. Jerry Lawler's feud against Memphis Wrestling's Jackie Fargo is one of wrestling's best examples of a teacher passing the torch to a student. Fargo, a top babyface, referred to as both the Fabulous One, which later led to him managing Stan Lane and Steve Keirn, aka the Fabulous Ones, and the King of Wrestling, had been heavily involved in Lawler's break into wrestling, befriending him after Lawler sent drawings from wrestling matches to the local TV station, resulting in Jerry's first TV appearance. Fargo befriended Lawler, putting him to work as his gopher and at his sign business before Lawler eventually broke into wrestling. Debuting in 1970, Lawler won championship gold with the NWA Southern Tag Team Championship with Jim White in NWA Mid-America. Lawler began rising in the ranks as a heel, breaking through thanks to his 1974 feud with Jackie Fargo. According to 411 Mania's William Rankin, still circulating and working the territory was longtime Memphis legend Jackie Fargo, who was not only known as the Fabulous One, but also the King of Memphis Wrestling. Having won well over 20 tag team championships, Fargo was also as renowned as a singles competitor, both as a face and a heel. Now, both men were well known for their brawling style, and fans were treated to some of the area's hardest-hitting bouts. The two traded the NWA Southern Heavyweight Championship several times before Lawler emerged victorious. Now, fans were shocked to see Lawler defeat the area's top dog, and as Lawler recalls in his memoir, "It's good to be the king, sometimes." A pre-match promo helped him gain a new nickname. "You know, Fargo, you've been the king around Memphis for a long time, but you're looking at the kid who's gonna knock you off your throne. Now, I won that match, and some kids were saying as I left the ring, 'Hey, you're the king, you're the king.'" Jerry also talks of how generous his mentor was to him in their matches. And what made it an even bigger deal was the fact that in that match, Jackie treated me as his equal. Now, looking back, I think he sold for me more than he did for the other guys he wrestled, and I think it was because he felt partly responsible for my being in the business, and he wanted me to be a success. The newly crowned king wasted no time embracing the role. At the time, Lawler was also wrestling in Georgia, and he met Bobby Shane, a wrestler who used a king gimmick, complete with a crown and robe. Lawler asked Bobby where he got it from, and Shane gave him the information. However, Shane told the new member of royalty that it would take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks to get it, and Shane, leaving to work in Australia without using his king gimmick, lent the outfit to Jerry. Lawler recalls the reaction he got from wearing the outlandish outfit and the tragic circumstances surrounding it. "To be honest with you, most of the other wrestlers laughed at me when I put that big crown on my head. They all thought it was a stupid gimmick, but the fans didn't. When I walked out on TV with it on, the people went nuts. I started wearing that crown and everything every week. I figured I'd give it back to Bobby Shane when he got back. He did come back to the States, but on one of his first trips back, in February of 1975, he got killed in a plane crash." Lawler continued wearing the crown until it was crushed in the ring, prompting his manager, Sam Bass, to replace it with a new one. Now, as for Jackie Fargo, while he was no longer the king, he was still the fans' beloved Fabulous One. Rocky Johnson. One of the King's most tenacious opponents was Rocky Johnson. Johnson, aka Wade Bowles, debuted in his Canadian homeland in 1966, establishing his credentials in different Canadian territories, including Maple Leaf Wrestling and Stampede Wrestling. In 1976, Johnson debuted in the Memphis area, with promoters playing up his boxing background while downplaying his wrestling role. The reason was to milk the recent boxer versus wrestler match between boxing great Muhammad Ali and Japanese wrestling sensation Antonio Inoki. Although the Ali versus Inoki match ended inconclusively, fans were still fascinated by the question of which style was superior, boxing or professional wrestling. According to the King, "In Memphis, we wanted to capitalize on Ali's publicity. Rocky Johnson had trained as a boxer. We said he was a sparring partner of George Foreman's, and Foreman had just had a championship fight with Ali. We brought Rocky Johnson to Memphis as a boxer. No one had heard of him as a wrestler. I challenged him to a wrestling versus boxing match as well." Rocky's background training in boxing helped in 2 ways. The first in giving him an air of credibility thanks to his famous sparring partners. Initially, Mr. Johnson trained to be a boxer. He sparred with the best, including Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. But it was wrestling that always drew his attention. The second was that his boxing knowledge added another layer to his wrestling repertoire. Johnson, well known for his drop kicks, incorporated boxing to help give larger opponents time to get up after he floored them with his drop kicks. I started drop kicking, and they were taking their time in getting up from it. I just started doing those little shuffles, and all of a sudden, people were going nuts. That's all it took. Rocky's feud against the King saw the two battle over the NWA Southern Heavyweight Championship and the King's Crown. Johnson would capture both, leading Lawler to rely on his trademark cheating and his stable of wrestlers, nicknamed Lawler's Army, to regain the title and the crown. The boxer versus wrestler battle was well booked, leading to capacity crowds at Memphis' Mid-South Coliseum, including a boxer versus wrestler bout that saw both men competing with no gloves. Now, Johnson also had battles in the area with foes including the Mongolian Stomper, Pork Chop Cash, and even NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race, but his battles with Lawler were the highlight of his run there. Superstar Bill Dundee. Now, wrestling fans know that promoters can't let a good feud go dormant for long. Jerry Lawler is an example of a wrestler with several signature opponents, with superstar Bill Dundee among the best. Bill Dundee, aka William Crookshanks, worked in the circus, reportedly as a trapeze artist, before trying his hand as a professional wrestler. Dundee debuted in the 1960s, working in the Australian-based World Championship Wrestling promotion before debuting in the US around 1974. Dundee was a fish out of water who nonetheless became a top draw in NWA Mid-America, and later, the Continental Wrestling Association. As Tim Dills writes, Dundee was Australian in the southern United States. He was short and stocky. He had proven to be a tough customer with some charisma. Now, with much of the territory's action occurring in Memphis, it probably didn't hurt that Dundee had a passing resemblance to Elvis Presley, and played that up with big frame sunglasses and jumpsuits. Now, whatever all this added up to boiled down to Dundee becoming very popular with the fans. Dundee's popularity made a feud with Lawler a must, and fans turned out in droves to see them battle, particularly in 1977. Memphis historians often point to the 1977 Dundee vs. Lawler feud as the most profitable of their many feuds, which began in 1975 and would be revisited in the 1980s. The Facebook group, Classic Memphis Wrestling, notes how the pair's 1977 War from the Summer to Fall was a notable feud in the CWA, which did a lot of business in terms of ticket sales. According to newspaper sources, the pair sold a total of 85,538 tickets over their 10-match feud, an average draw of 8,500 fans every Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum. They sold out the Mid-South Coliseum once during the feud, on August 1, 1977, with 11,300 fans attending. Keeping with Memphis tradition, the two fought in every stipulation match under the sun, including lights-out matches, matches with special referees, and bouts where one wrestler put up their hair or a Cadillac to get their opponent into the ring. The hair matches reached outrageous levels, with Lawler's manager Mickey Poole losing his hair, only to miraculously grow it back with a hair tonic. That was just the start, as superstar Bill Dundee lost his hair and then put his wife Beverly's hair on the line, with his wife losing her locks. Dundee and Lawler would eventually join forces, forming a superstar team that fans knew was bound to crumble. And crumbled it did, with one of the two betraying the other and renewing their rivalry. The beauty of the feud was that, given time and distance, the two men could be thrown back against each other to relative success down the years, though never quite recapturing the same magic as the 70s. Teaming together and rubbing along well for a decent chunk of time only made the somewhat inevitable turn all the better, sparking another series of matches. Now, in 1985, Dundee and Lawler parted ways again, with Dundee scoring a shocking win late in the year when he beat Lawler in a loser leaves town match. Now, the King was booked to work outside of Memphis, forcing the promotion to come up with a storyline explanation for his absence. Rinse, wash, repeat, and make loads of dough. Handsome Jimmy Valiant. Now, the late 1970s feud between Handsome Jimmy Valiant and Jerry the King Lawler was one of the hottest feuds ever, both literally and figuratively. Valiant, who had enjoyed tremendous tag team acclaim with kayfabe brother Johnny in the WWF and other promotions, entered Memphis, quickly capturing the AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship before feuding with the King. The Valiant vs. Lawler feud featured several unforgettable angles, including one where Lawler, who had kayfabe retired from wrestling to pursue a music career, began a music concert, only for a crazed Valiant to break a guitar over his head. Lawler and Valiant fought in stipulation matches, including two $20,000 steel cage stretcher matches, where Valiant beat Lawler for the title, only to drop it to him the following week in the same match. Valiant's war against Lawler was just the beginning though, and he inflicted a serious blow when he cost Lawler a chance at winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship during a 90-minute no disqualification bout against Harley Race. Now Lawler had the match in hand when Valiant ran in, breaking a bottle over Lawler's head and pummeling him until officials drove Valiant off. The match ended by referee's decision, with Race retaining. The Valiant vs. Lawler feud was another popular box office draw, with Jerry Lawler estimating in his memoir that the program ran for 16 weeks. Quite the accomplishment. Now a hair versus hair match was booked, presumably to end the feud, and with fans confident Lawler would triumph, as he'd never lost a hair versus hair match. Fans hoping to see Valiant lose his long golden locks were disappointed when Jimmy arrived on crutches, informing the fans he'd slipped on some ice in New York City and could not compete. Valiant gave the ring announcer a doctor's note, but Lawler wasn't having it and insisted the match take place. When Lawler turned his back on Valiant, Handsome Jimmy clobbered Lawler with a crutch, knocking him senseless and producing a pair of scissors. The fans were incensed until superstar Bill Dundee showed up to help the King out. That is, until Valiant KO'd him as well, taking off some of Dundee's hair. However, according to the King, there were no plans for anyone to lose their hair. Because Valiant had screwed both me and Dundee, we didn't think people would want to see either of us have our heads shaved. Jerry couldn't have been more wrong, as some of the fans in Memphis Mid-South Coliseum went berserk. We were sitting in the locker room when someone told us the crowd was going nuts. They kicked out some windows and the doors to the Coliseum. Someone set fire to some chairs. It was a pretty ugly scene. As a result, we had to suspend Valiant, or rather, Valiant had to go home. Valiant was kayfabe suspended in the hope the promotion could calm the angry fans down, but he eventually returned, this time as an ally of the promotion's babyfaces. Handsome Jimmy later befriended Jerry Lawler, calling him Kingfish and endearing himself to Memphis wrestling fans. That is, until Valiant's ego got the best of him. In late 1978, Valiant approached Lawler and Dundee, who had recently captured the AWA Southern Tag Team Championship from the Headhunters, about teaming up for a six-man tag match. The problem was that Lawler and Dundee were already booked to face the Headhunters in a rematch, with the Headhunters manager, Chuck Malone's, hair on the line. Valiant got hot under the collar, hinting that Lawler was jealous of him. Well, Lawler bit his tongue, but Valiant continued pressing Lawler's buttons until the King insulted Valiant in no uncertain terms, then pimp-slapped Valiant, knocking him senseless. Once again, the two were at each other's throats. Valiant proved so popular that business took a major hit when he left the area. According to Jerry Lawler, he and Jerry Jarrett were desperate to bring Handsome Jimmy back. Memphis, Jimmy was over so big, but he decided to move away from the territory completely, and our crowds went down to nothing. So we called him up and said, "Jimmy, what would it take to bring you back?" And he said, "What if you bought me a house?" He and Big Mama came to town and picked out a house. Jerry Jarrett bought the house for them, and they stayed about 6 weeks. Lawler and Jarrett no longer had Jimmy Valiant, and they had a house to sell. A house painted black, with black furniture and a black bathtub. Well, fortunately, a Jimmy Valiant fan bought the house, despite its odd color scheme. Joe LeDuc. Lawler's rivalry with Canadian strongman Joe LeDuc was a brutal affair that produced some of Memphis's most talked-about moments. In 1978, LeDuc, who portrayed a burly lumberjack powerhouse, battled Lawler in a series of matches that often ended in carnage. LeDuc, who began his career under the guidance of Paul LeDuc, teamed with Paul as a pair of rugged lumberjacks. Eventually, Joe stepped out on his own, utilizing his real-life power to perform feats of strength that captivated fans. In one skit, LeDuc pulled a car with Jimmy Hart on the hood around the Mid-South Coliseum. In another, he braced himself against a wall and kept the car from going forward just with his legs. Memphis fans were used to seeing violent bouts and brutal beatdowns outside the ring. Nonetheless, LeDuc managed to top previous incidents. One encounter from 1978 still stands out as a defining moment in their blood war. In the midst of a heated battle with the King at the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum, the strongman LeDuc hoisted Jerry over his head and hurled him over the top rope. Lawler flew with some serious force, and the trajectory was throwing Lawler into the edge of the ringside announce table, some 9 or so feet away. The King was out, legitimately. He suffered an injury to the leg and was on the shelf for a couple of weeks. This moment has been included in many highlight reels over the years. But the most infamous segment came after Lawler pinned LeDuc, leading to the Wild Lumberjack vowing revenge. Joe told announcer Lance Russell that he was taking a blood oath. To the horror of viewers, LeDuc produced an axe, cut his arm, swearing in his own blood that he would destroy Lawler in their next encounter. Interestingly enough, this wasn't the first time the rugged LeDuc tried the stunt. Now, according to the book, The Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, The Heels, LeDuc attempted the stunt during an interview, but co-promoter Jerry Jarrett stepped in. The first time Joe cut himself was in a taped interview. I was able to stop the shoot as soon as he began. I advised that not only did I object to self-mutilation, but the television station would not air the incident. That didn't stop LeDuc, as he performed the stunt successfully during a live broadcast. As legendary announcer Lance Russell would recall, "Nobody was more stunned than I was," he said. To see that right on camera, with him bringing that axe down, and that skin just peeling back and slowly starting to spout blood out. What a shock that was. LeDuc and Lawler battled over the AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship, with Lawler somehow surviving the Monster's wrath. The two would renew their rivalry in the CWA in the 1980s, but the violence and blood of their 1978 battle stands the test of time. Do you remember these feuds involving Jerry Lawler? Don't worry if we didn't cover all of the King's campaigns, as there are more to come. Share your thoughts in the comments section, and let us know if there are any videos you'd like wrestling's greatest moments to cover. In the meantime, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, follow us on X and Instagram, and spread the good news about wrestling's greatest moments, the channel that celebrates the squared circle.